Hey, this is Jason Spangler with Brad England on Threadheads. This is the video show that we get together and try to record sometimes, just talking about things in the hobby. Hey, Brad, how's it going, man?
Good, Jason. How you doing this evening?
Good. I'll go ahead and get it started off tonight. We want to just share. We've had some changes in our lives. I've recently decided that it's time to go back into the classroom, and so I'm going to be a seventh grade social studies teacher next year in a little town in South Carolina. I used to teach a long time ago, taught for about 13 years in the South Carolina system, and took about 5 years off to help raise my son and kind of be the work from home eBay dad. That's how I describe myself to people at our church when they ask, "What are you doing these days?" I'd say, I work on eBay, and try not to get into any details. And so, anyways, I'll be going back into the classroom right after NOAC. Actually, I'll get back from NOAC on a Saturday probably, and Monday morning I've got to be there. So I don't have much of a break. So, but Brad, I'm not the only one who's kind of have a change of job description. Tell us about your change.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. Mine's not near as exciting as yours. I actually, you know, um, left the scouting profession and jumped into an interim job with AT&T, just because I had some friends in the business that worked for a company, a retail store. So jumped into that, and within a couple of weeks, I was on the radar to become a manager with them. So I'm actually managing an AT&T retail location for the time being, and we'll see how this career rides out. But definitely a change, a huge change of pace, and a change of stress from the profession. So it's been a great move, and I'm enjoying it. So congratulations on your going back to work, Jason. I'm sure you'll enjoy hanging out with those seventh graders all day, and you might even find you a few patch traders in that group that you can get to hound for you.
Well, funny story. My last gig working at a school like this actually got involved. This is before kids. It's like BC and AD. There ought to be something before kids because your life is totally different. And I was able to get involved with a local troop in the town that I was teaching in, and got some of those boys interested in the OA, and used to like drive the church bus to take them to OA functions. And a couple of those guys ended up being lodge officers. One of them ended up being a lodge chief. So not that I was super responsible for them making that leap, but I was able to kind of be at least a chauffeur to get them to the fellowships. So let's talk. Let's tell people a little bit about what we're going to be talking about tonight. We generally try to keep our Threadheads show to about a 30-minute format, so that's kind of what we try to stick to. And we've got some interesting segments. I'm going to start us off here in just a second, doing a little short segment about Girl Scout collecting, something I'm getting interested in. But we'll keep that short because we don't want to lose you. Some of you might, if I go on too long about that, you might cut out on us. Then we have another one that's going to be kind of fun. We're going to talk about for beginning collectors, give some examples of times where we have sort of dissolved collections. We had a collection and then we got rid of it. And then we're going to talk about a topic. This is our main topic, focused on things in the Scout Patch Collectors group that get deleted because the two hosts of this show are your admins for that page, for that group. And so we've had examples in the past. We want to share about that and kind of give some tips. Then we have something also about, oh, my glasses here. I should wear my glasses. FOS values, and Brad's going to talk about that. And I have an eBay Ninja trick I'm going to share, and then we're going to wrap it up. So we think we have a pretty good show here. And Brad, I'll just go right into Girl Scout patches since that was what I said. What I wanted to do is just give everybody sort of like a little 3-minute rundown of collecting Girl Scout stuff. And this is a good example to kind of get you started. The thing to remember about Girl Scouts is it's not like Boy Scouts where we collect a lot of activity patches. And I would even consider Order the Arrow patches to be like activity patches. Their collector of Girl Scout stuff is much more focused on the nationally issued items. And so this is actually a junior scout book from about maybe 10, 15 years ago. And it kind of gives you an idea that this is not a collector's guide. This is like a requirements guide. This would almost be like a merit badge requirements book the Boy Scouts would have. So at one time, the Girl Scouts had, as their advancement program, a lot of different badges that girls could collect. And I'm sorry, not collect. I should say they could earn. Collectors would collect them, but they would earn them. Nowadays, they've actually kind of gone away from that, but we won't talk about that. That's a whole other topic. So when you're talking about collecting Girl Scout stuff, it's mostly focused on collecting nationally issued things like proficiency badges. So they don't call them merit badges. The language would be a proficiency badge. And in Girl Scout collecting, there is a Bible. Prepping for our show tonight, I was not able to find my copy of this book, which is more recent. This is a slightly dated version. But these two ladies have put together sort of the Bible of collecting Girl Scout memorabilia. And you can see it here. Their names are Mary Degenhart and Judith Kirsch. And this is, again, not the most recent one. There's a more recent one that you can get on eBay. But I've got it tabbed here to show you that what they did was they went in and broke down all of the proficiency badges. And there's a lot more in this book, but I'm just going to focus on that one little quick thing tonight. They broke down all the proficiency badges, and they have the design here. So if this was a merit badge, you could see the design so you could identify what you had. And then they have sort of a chart going across that tells you what cloth combination it appeared in. And they've been able to go in and track down the cloth material that the Girl Scouts used over the years, and they've got it printed down pretty good. They know by the year what styles of cloth were used, and then of course the same cloth was then used to produce the patches. So they can tell you with pretty good accuracy certain types of badges came out in certain types of cloth. So let me just kind of give you an example of that. I've started to go through my collection of Girl Scout stuff and try to identify what I have. Not very far along with that, but just give you an example. Here's a patch that they would call this silver green. I don't know how the light's going to work here too well, but the cloth, silver green, and this just happens to be the Rambler patch. And so this was issued from 1938 to 1948. And so this Rambler patch may appear in different materials, and that's how they would chart it across there. And sort of similar to our Boy Scout merit badges. We have Type A, Type B merit badges, and those are by eras when the Boy Scouts changed the style of the patch or they changed the material it was made from. So it's sort of similar in that way. What my goal is to try to take this collection and put together a collection by type. So that's kind of what Girl Scout collectors would do, very similar to Boy Scout collectors. We would try to collect the different titles, like this one's Reader, which you can see like a little book there. And then this one is Community Safety. So it has a little like stop sign kind of thing. So you would try to collect all the badges, boating, by era, by cloth type. That's really how the Girl Scouts do it. So that's just kind of a beginner, very, very beginner thing for collecting Girl Scout proficiency badges. And if I was really good, Brad, I would do one of these 20-minute videos that you and I have talked about for getting people more interested in this. And I'm still a newbie, so maybe that's why I haven't done one. So we'll maybe one day we'll get there. But let me throw it back to you, and let's go ahead and move to another segment talking about times that we've had to downsize our collection and kind of pivot and make a change.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. Hey, appreciate the Girl Scout stuff. That's pretty interesting stuff. Yeah, I think I know I've done this a couple of times. You know, changed directions of where I'm collecting. You know, several times along the way. You know, for different reasons. What, you know, being the space that I've got or the organizing method that I'm using. Sometimes things just get a little out of hand. Actually, most recently, a couple of years ago, I bought some collections out of Kentucky. Just one of those things. Got a good deal on them. I ended up picking up 2 large collections, 123s at Kalasha, and I'm not even sure I'm pronouncing that right. And then Lodge 62, which is also out of Kentucky. And then those, you know, are predecessor lodges to Newdigan 205. So I ended up collecting those. Well, what ended up happening was I would pick up pieces as I went along the way, and I'd pick up those $20, $30 pieces and stuff. But where I really started to think about these collections was, one, I didn't really have a tie to the collections, and 2, how far do I really go? I mean, you start talking about a ZIT or a F1, and you're looking at a $500 to $600 patch. Well, in reality, if I were going to spend that kind of money on a patch, it would probably be something from more of my niche collecting area, like Oklahoma or Texas. You know, picking up a big piece in those big collections, or, you know, really focused collections I have. So that's really what I started to do, was look at these little side collections I had, and was able to, in that case, turn them into things um, that I could use. Or turning them into cash that I used to turn around and purchase things that I needed, or needed to fill some of the collections that I focused more on. In the beginning, when you and I talked, Jason, I was huge into international stuff, and I actually did the same thing with that. It got to the point where it was fun to trade, and I did a lot of trading with that, but it just got to the point where I wanted to focus more on old Region 9, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, as well as Arkansas, OA, and council stuff. So I kind of shifted my focus at that, and I think it's okay to do that. What I ended up having was two collections that then became trading stock. With those two OA collections. And I actually moved one of the collections as a collection because I found someone that wanted to collect that, was a collector of that, and it filled a lot of holes for them, or it helped them decide they wanted to start that collection. So it was fun putting them together, but I think what it came down to was figuring out if I was really going to put out the cash, or the trades, if I had the trade stock to really build or complete that collection, especially coming from two merged lodges, because they were going to be easy to complete, as far as like they weren't going to make any more issues, so I would eventually have them complete. It was just that decision of whether I wanted to go seek out those tough pieces. So I mean, I think that's why you have some people that turn in, do name number collections and that kind of stuff. So that's actually mine. Jason, you said you had some kind of similar situation with yours. What do you got going on?
Yeah, I really think it goes back to kind of what you were talking about. Time. Do you have the time to really invest in tracking these things down and organizing them and actually enjoying the collection? And also money. Do you have the investment to make to purchase these items and to keep realistically getting closer and closer to maybe finishing that collection? So if I go back in time, when I was when I first branched out from my home lodge, I began collecting the other lodges in South Carolina where I grew up. And it's a small state, so there were only about maybe 5 lodges, 6 lodges maybe in the state of South Carolina. And so that was not impossible to do. And this was in the 1990s. So before some lodges went crazy issuing lots of new stuff, back in those days, there just wasn't as much of these new issues to chase down. And so that was sort of manageable. But at the same time, there were some other lodges that were a part of our section. And as I was like section officer and section chief, sort of got interested in collecting those lodges as well. So I dipped my toe in trying to pick up items from those other lodges, some of which were in North Carolina. And I kind of did that for a year or two and just kind of came to a point where there were a lot of patches and I felt like I really wasn't making a lot of progress, and money was an issue because I was still in college. And so there was a point there where I actually just sort of gave up on those and sort of like retreated back to just my core collections of South Carolina, and I sold off the ones that I had. And it wasn't until years later, maybe almost a decade later, that I guess I had a real job, had a little bit of money, and got reinvested in those other lodges because I still had an interest in them and sort of built back up those collections. So sometimes in my situation, it was a situation where I had to sort of pivot away because it just wasn't the right time, but I was able to come back later and pick that up. So anyways, for what it's worth, I think that's something that I've done. Brad, let's go ahead and get into our big main topic now, which is something that would be kind of fun. Brad and I decided that tonight we wanted to have a topic that would be a little maybe controversial, just something to kind of give people something to think about, talk about, send us some feedback on. So definitely anything that you hear in tonight's episode of Threadheads, if you have a comment or something, come over to the website scoutpatchcollectors.com. You'll find this video posted there. You can leave a comment, or just find us in the Facebook group Scout Patch Collectors and leave a comment there. Let me just start off. The topic here is going to be things that get deleted in the Facebook group. And this is actually timely because I just today was messaging back and forth with someone who felt like there was a topic in the group that was deleted, and he was not happy about that. Sort of felt like maybe myself or Brad had deleted this topic, and thought, well, why did we do that? It turns out neither Brad nor I have any memory of deleting that thread. So sorry about that, and you know who you are because you were just messaging me. But we did want to talk about topics that get deleted and just talk about why we do that. I would say in general that Brad and I are not heavy-handed when it comes to the group. That's one of the things that we have really prided ourselves on is we let it be a forum where people can sell things, buy things, give their opinions, and certainly people do all those things. But here's one thing I would sort of say, and Brad, I'm going to throw it back to you and let you give us an example. I always cringe, and this is always a red flag for me, when someone starts a post in the group and their first sentence is, "This may not be patch related, but blah, blah, blah." Well, whatever happens after blah, blah, blah sometimes is not on topic. And depending on the reaction in the group, or maybe if I catch it early enough or Brad sees it, those get deleted. And so, say for example, I would say generically, we would ask people to remember that this is a group dedicated to trading, collecting, talking about Boy Scout memorabilia. It is not, however, a general scouting forum to talk about rank advancements or what's going on in your home troop or some of those other sort of things that are more generally scouting. And there probably are other forums and groups where that would be appropriate. But we don't want the sort of bandwidth in the group being absorbed in a big discussion about something that's not related to patches. And so sometimes we will delete those and move on. So Brad, let me throw it back to you, and you can kind of give us some examples and also your opinion about this topic in general.
Yeah, Jason. So I want to piggyback off of that too. I mean, I've seen some of those threads, the general scouting threads that pop up, or questions about rank advancement and stuff, and most of the time they'll kind of die off themselves, and so then we don't really have to even go in there and moderate it. I think those threads just end up dying, which is just fine. Sometimes the poster will delete it. Whoever posted that will end up deleting it too. So there's really two ways: either the moderator gets rid of it, or the person that posts it will remove it. And then there's also the ability for a Facebook anybody that's a member of the group to post something, or to turn in a post or a comment, and then we actually get to review those. It's just like Jason. I think you pretty much hit right on with what we look for. And most of the time I get somebody that'll tag me in a post saying, "Hey, delete this." And here lately, because of how big the group's growing and how good spammers are getting, I've deleted more spam than real comments or conversations or threads even about scouting. So you'd be surprised that 7,500 members of a group, people that are posting all day, every day, and it's really not that big an issue. We just we try to stay away from the political stuff. I mean, we dealt with this a couple years ago or a year and a half ago with some of the political stuff and scouting politics and just real controversial things that can come up, and things that can be heavily opinionated, just so we don't have the deterrent from the real reason we're in the group. So yeah, Jason, I think pretty much we know, and I know you've let a few things slide that aren't actually scout things, and they hang out for a couple of minutes, and usually they'll get their answer and go by the way, and we don't really have to police it. But yeah, so in general, if it doesn't have anything to do with collecting, the hobby, and even a bit into some generals about scouting, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more of that goes on than we realize, and then somebody takes it offline, and so I mean, they get their answer, and maybe they use the collectors group to kind of get a resource, and usually that's okay. It's when that thread becomes so negative, back and forth between 2 or 3 or 4 people, and the thread just gets out of control, that somebody's got to shut it down. And I've had people call me during the day and say, "Hey, are you watching this Facebook thread? Because you or Jason or somebody needs to jump on it." So if it gets that bad, or somebody's calling me on my cell phone, or I get look at my phone and I've got 4 or 5 messages from people that I generally don't message, it's time to go look at stuff. So the group does really well at kind of policing themselves and understanding boundaries, and trying not to blow it up too much with irrelevant material. So yeah, so that's pretty much on that topic, Jason. While I've got the floor here, man, I'm just going to kind of move on to our next segment. FOS, CSPs, and their value. This is something that isn't addressed much. I mean, I know in the CSP guide that they put out, they don't put a value on FOS patches, but they will put the donation amount. This has always been like a big pet peeve of mine, because I've had people tell me that those patches are worth $100 because somebody gave them $100 for it. So here's the line in the sand with that, Jason, here, and everybody that's watching. An FOS patch is a gift. It's a gift for giving the council $100. If you have any council that really wants to argue that, ask them how they're putting that in their budget. I will guarantee you that they're taking a loss on the $300 to $600 to $1,000 order they're placing on the patches, and they're allowing that money to go into a donation, Friends of Scouting fund, or however they want to do it. Having worked for a council, I know this, because if they really want to get stickler on, that patch being worth $100, the next time you go to pick up your FOS patch, have them ring it up as a product sale and see how much they scream. So FOS is a gift for giving an amount to Friends of Scouting. So it's a thank you. I mean, I've got a couple here. Most councils do, some kind of cool little patch. They write this off as, a thank you. So as far as values, I mean, it would be just like any other, in my opinion, any other council strip that a council makes 1,000 of. I mean, you can kind of value it based on that. Some people, I mean, it's kind of a big controversy on whether they really hold much value, because different councils view it differently. Some councils decide they want to hold on to these and not let anybody get them 8 years down the road unless you do give the $100 that they originally asked for. But those are usually people that are stuck on the fact that that quote unquote is a $100 patch. I mean, I don't know about you, Jason, but all the councils that I've ever worked with weren't rich enough not to take a $20 bill if I walked in and said, hey, I want one of those FOS patches from 3 years ago. Will you take $20 for it? I would be hard pressed to find many out there that would say no to that, or that could afford to say no to that if 5, 10, 15, 20 people walked in to give them that much for a patch they have a buck in. And so I think now with collecting getting a little bit bigger and people starting to try to educate councils on really what these things are worth, I mean, I think it'll come around to a point when even those councils that are a stickler about it will come off of it and understand. I mean, I like to remind my DE, when he decides that this patch is worth my $185 donation, that if he wants me to do that, I can write him a check to council, and he can count it as a $185 product sale, and he doesn't really care for that much. So that's kind of just the stripped down version of it. The FOS patch is worth, whatever, the same $5 it would be if you bought it. It was a regular council strip. You stick it on your, jacket, or, if you only made 100 of them, and the book says that something made with 100 is worth $100. I mean, that's kind of where I would value things at. I don't think there's any reason we shouldn't be, documenting that. Just putting a mere dollar value based on the donation doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But so that's kind of my spiel on the FOS patches. Jason, you got anything to really add to that?
Yeah, I would just say kind of the obvious, which is that, what happens is $100 donation. So yes, some people did contribute $100, and as you say, they got that as a gift. So essentially, if I, as a collector, gave the council $100, then in my mind, that's what I have invested in the patch. But what happens is there's a lot of councils that operate differently. So at some point, many councils have chosen to just liquidate those FOS patches, as you say, maybe years later. And so years later, what was a $100 donation patch is now a $3 patch sitting on the shelf. And so as a collector, if you go in and buy that for $3 and then you try to represent it as a $100 patch, that's where there's sort of a problem. And I think that's why eventually the folks who wrote the CSI guide, the Council Shoulder Insignia Guide, took out the value in the value column what the donation amount was, because it's not consistent across the country how those things are handled. So I think you did a good job of explaining that. Let me just kind of transition to our next to the last segment, which is an eBay ninja trick. We try to include these in every once in a while just to kind of give some people an idea. I sort of, earlier you and I were talking, I guess I do consider myself a little bit of a patch dealer, and so I've got a problem that I had for a long time, but I now have a solution to it, so I want to share with everybody. What I used to do in maintaining a online store that had several thousand items, what I used to do when I added new inventory is that I would try to alphabetize everything because I wanted to have my boxes nice and neatly organized. So say, for example, I got in a small collection and it had a number of OA flaps, because we've talked about OA flaps several times on this show tonight. Those are numbered, and so what I used to do was I would list those on eBay, and then when I would go to my inventory boxes, I would put the patches in numerical order right behind the older patches that I had listed in my store. And that way, if I went to a traderie and I wanted to take that box with me and sell some of that inventory live at a traderie, I could do that and everything was organized, no problem. Well, you might have already figured out the inherent problem in this is that eventually things are going to get out of order, and I would have a problem then if I sold something actually putting my hand on it and finding it. So here's what I did. I'll just kind of grab a little handful here to show you. I came up with a system where I now give all of my patches, you can call it a product label or a SKU number or some sort of custom code, but I basically print out labels using like a mail merge feature, and every patch now gets a label, and this little label is now the address of that patch. So I never reorganize these patches to get them in numerical or chronological order. They all, in my boxes, they always stay in order by that number. And in the title of my listing, I have this number in brackets at the end. So I like to describe it as the address. That number is the address where this patch lives. It always stays in the box at that address. So if I ever need to find it, I should be able to find it very quickly. And so that little trick has just saved me lots and lots of heartache. And the little boxes that I use, the Jensen boxes, work really well for that. So that's my eBay ninja trick for the day. You can give your patches their own address, and then you can always find them when you sell them. Brad, let's throw it back to you for our closing to wrap us up.
Yeah, Jason, hey, appreciate that ninja trick, man. I really appreciate the viewers allowing our show to go on as long as we have. I mean, we always get great feedback from it. We're always interested in feedback. You can catch Jason or I, either one, on Facebook. Shoot us an email. My email is really easy. It's bgengland@gmail.com. You always throw me an email there. You catch Jason on Gmail as well, or his email address is all over his newsletters and stuff, so you can find that guy. So shoot us some ideas, anything you want to hear about, any topics we need to discuss, anything that burning issues, and things like that. So hey, Jason, in closing here, you mentioned something about this GoFundMe in your last newsletter. So kind of give us a little insight on that as we roll out.
Well, I think it's really interesting. What happened was there's a guy on my council doing a wood badge ticket item. And so they just finished up wood badge in my council a few weeks ago. And there's a campsite, an Adirondack campsite, that has 3 Adirondack units, and all of them are in really bad shape. The siding's bad, the roof leaks, and we have scouts that are going to be coming to camp here in a few weeks. And so he got the idea from somebody that should be a ticket item. And the way he was going to raise the money was by creating a GoFundMe campaign. Now, if that's new to you and it was new to me, it's basically a crowdfunding online website where you can put your project, what the goal is, and pictures of it and everything. And then anybody who wants to can go in and contribute. They would just go there, basically put in your credit card, which I know not many people are comfortable in doing, but this is a pretty well-known site. And it keeps track of everything, keeps track of how close you get to the goal. It shows who donated and how much, and it's sort of like this little sprint to the finish to see if you can get it done. So when I saw that this guy was trying to fund this project, I think when I saw it, maybe it was a couple $100 or 250, $300. So I chipped in like $50, but I started sharing it on Facebook. That's kind of what I'm good at with my newsletter. I shared it in my newsletter and on Facebook. And probably about 72 hours, maybe 4 days, we were able to raise the entire $2,000. Tonight, before getting on the show, I checked, and the last person had kicked in the last like $35, and he hit the $2,000 mark. Now, what I really think is interesting about this is, and I don't know about you, Brad, but I've been in OA lodges where we have done patch auctions, fundraiser patches. We've done all these little things where we thought we were raising money for a specific project. We auctioned off, $1,000 worth of patches at this fellowship, and that's going to pay for, X, Y, Z at camp. When in reality, that money would just sort of go into a big melting pot, and who knows if the project really got funded from that pot. But what I like about this model, and it's maybe professional scouts wouldn't like this, it's a way for Camp Coker alumni, in my case, to directly fund a project at camp where we know that the guy's going to get the money, he's going to go buy the materials, and at OA Workday in about 10 days, we can actually show up with hammers and we can do the work. And so that's just a really cool model, I think, that to me is very, very intriguing. And I think maybe some other people will use it. So check out GoFundMe. I looked at it the other day. There's about 50 different projects on there that have BSA in the title. A lot of them are Eagle Scout projects, always asking for donations to fund their Eagle Scout projects. But I just think it's a really cool way to crowdsource and get things. By the way, Brad, we ended up with just under 40 different people contributed to this campaign. And the single biggest gift, I think, was like $200 or $250. So it was pretty cool. So
that's fantastic, Jason.
All right. Well, we probably have gone over our allotted 30 minutes, so we will sign off for this episode of Threadheads. Thanks very much. Remember that you can always find the archived episodes at scoutpatchcollectors.com, and go over to Facebook, as Brad has mentioned, and find us on Facebook, Scout Patch Collectors group on Facebook. Thank you very much.